What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Thursday, January 19th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, let's take a look at this 4-game NBA slate. So at the point guard position, I like Fred VanVleet from the Toronto Raptors playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 10th worst defense overall. They give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Fred VanVleet has averaged 38.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 37 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He's projected at 34.5 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 42 fantasy points or more in this matchup, get you 5 times value or more. He's 8,100 DraftKings salary, 200 less on FanDuel, and Fred VanVleet has scored 63, 61, and 17 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 37, 44, and 26 minutes. So monster minutes and monster production the last 2 games. So I like his chances in a favorable matchup. So I like Fred VanVleet here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now if you want a mid-range play here, this is more of a gut feeling. He has pretty good player versus team history. The price is nothing special here, but I do think he has 40 plus fantasy point upside in this matchup. So I like Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics playing the Golden State Warriors, who have the 8th worst defense overall. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Marcus Smart has averaged 29.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He's projected at 29.1 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 35 fantasy points or more in this one, get you 5 times value or more. He's 6,500 DraftKings salary, 200 less on FanDuel. Marcus Smart has scored 25, 40, and 43 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 35, and 35 minutes. So I like Marcus Smart here versus the Golden State Warriors. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. Now, Marcus Smart also eligible at the shooting guard position. There's another player from the Boston Celtics team that has a good chance to hit value or exceed value here tonight. Take a look at Malcolm Brogdon from the Boston Celtics playing the Golden State Warriors, who have the 8th worst defense overall, give up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Malcolm Brogdon has averaged 26.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 24 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He's projected at 27.6 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 32 fantasy points or more in this matchup, get you 5 times value or more. He's 5,900 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. Malcolm Brogdon has scored 26, 42, and 26 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 27, 31, and 20 minutes. So I like Malcolm Brogdon here versus the Golden State Warriors. So guys, just keep your eyes on Jaylen Brown. He's still questionable, and while Jaylen Brown is out, there's a lot of value to be had from these Boston Celtics. You could also play a guy like Derek White from the Boston Celtics. at only $5,100 DraftKings salary, $700 more on FanDuel, averaging 22.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 26 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He's projected at 21.7 fantasy points here tonight, but he could easily score 30 fantasy points or more, get you over 5 times value. So at only $5,100 DraftKings salary, Derek White has scored 36, 9, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 4, and 36 minutes. So if Jaylen Brown is out, that would bump up my priority for a guy like Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, or Derek White. And I think you could get away with playing 2 out of the 3 Boston Celtics value plays here. So I like Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White if Jaylen Brown is out here versus the Golden State Warriors. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won. And then we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy. And we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Gary Trent Jr. from the Toronto Raptors playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 10th worst defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing small forwards. Gary Trent Jr. has averaged 28.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He's projected at 25.7 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 35 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's $6,600 DraftKings salary, $400 more on FanDuel, and Gary Trent Jr. has scored 45, 33, and 18 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 44, 41, and 20 minutes. So monster minutes the past couple of games. We'll see how many minutes he gets here tonight. If he can play 35 minutes or more here, he's at averaging 0.89 fantasy points per minute. So that would put him at 30 fantasy points or more fairly easily. I think he can hit value here tonight. He could even have a 40-plus fantasy point game. So I like Gary Trent Jr. here versus the Minnesota Vikings or the Minnesota Timberwolves. Another small forward that I like is Andrew Wiggins from the Golden State Warriors playing the Boston Celtics, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing small forwards. Andrew Wiggins has averaged 32.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He's projected at 30.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's only $5,800 DraftKings salary, $900 more on FanDuel. Andrew Wiggins has scored 24, 23, and 32 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 28, and 27 minutes. So I like Andrew Wiggins here versus the Boston Celtics. And if you're going to play any of those Boston Celtics plays that I gave you in this video, I think this is a good spot to run it back with a Golden State Warrior who's got 30-plus fantasy point upside. I mean, averaging 32.6 fantasy points per game. So even if he only gets his season average here, it's going to get you well over 5 times value. So this is one of my favorite mid-range or value plays on the slate. So I like Andrew Wiggins here versus the Boston Celtics. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. Now, Jason Tatum has been absolutely crushing it with Jaylen Brown out. So if Jaylen Brown is out again, you got to consider Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics as one of your studs. At $10,800 DraftKings salary, 200 more on FanDuel. He scored 71, 57, and 44 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 40, 36, and 38 minutes. So if Jaylen Brown is out, you could play Jason Tatum as your stud, and then one of those mid-range value plays like a Malcolm Brogdon for 5,900. And that'll be a good stack here. Run it back with Andrew Wiggins. So that's looking pretty good to me. But if you want to save some salary at the power forward position, take a look at Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing power forwards. Tobias Harris has averaged 32.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He's projected at 30.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's only 6,100 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 233.5 points scored in this game. Tobias Harris has scored 47 and 30 fantasy points in his last 2 games, playing 35 and 31 minutes. I don't think his price has caught up to the minutes and the production that he's been putting in the last 2 games since he returned from, I think he was out for injury, but he is back playing plenty of minutes and he is super productive. Low price tag here. He's got an opportunity here to crush value. So I like Tobias Harris here versus the Portland Trailblazers. Okay, moving on to the center position. So stud on the slate in a good matchup is Joel Embiid from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Joel Embiid has averaged 57.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 38% usage rate. He's projected at 52 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 55 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's 11,000 DraftKings salary, 500 more on FanDuel. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 233.5 points scored in this game. And Joel Embiid has scored 59, 61, and 46 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 35, and 35 minutes. So I like Joel Embiid here versus the Portland Trailblazers. But I got a good value play for you here at the center position. Take a look at Precious Achiuwa from the Toronto Raptors playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 10th worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing centers. Precious Achiuwa has averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 19 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 20.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.6 times value. He's 3,700 DraftKings salary, 800 more on FanDuel. Precious Achiuwa has scored 22, 18, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 26, 20, and 27 minutes. Now he's got a fantastic matchup, low price tag. Been playing close to 25 minutes a game the last 3 games. And he's averaging 1.02 fantasy points per minute. So if he can play 25 minutes here, he can score close to 30 fantasy points in this one and crush value. So I like Precious Achiuwa as a sleeper pick or a value play here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.